Viewer discretion is advised. The following content may contain material that some viewers find disturbing or offensive. While we strive to create content that is informative and engaging, the topics discussed today touch upon sensitive subjects. We believe in open discussion and exploring complex themes, but we also understand that certain content can be challenging for some individuals. Your well-being is our priority. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to click away. We encourage you to proceed with caution and take care of yourself. For those who choose to continue, thank you for joining us in this important conversation. We appreciate your viewership and encourage you to follow our channel for more thought-provoking content.
Screaming loud, a song of regret. Prices climbing mountains that no one can scale. When the system crumbles, they'll never tell the tale. When all else fails, they take you to war, knocking on your door, leaving peace on the floor, with promises of glory, but it's all just a chore. When all else fails, they take you to war. Factories rust, dreams collecting dust, gold-lined pockets, but there's no one to trust. They'll sell you a story painted in disguise, while we're breaking our backs, chasing endless lies. When all else fails, they take you to war, knocking on your door, leaving peace on the floor, with promises of glory, but it's all just a chore. When all else fails, they take you to war. And the streets cry out with the deafening sound. The people lost, but they'll never back down. The higher-ups gamble with lives on the line, but this time we're ready. This time we won't sign. High inflation's a weapon. They aim at the weak. They silence the truth, but the cracks start to speak. History repeats the same old charade, but we're the wildfire that cannot be swayed. On the streets cry out with the deafening sound. The people lost, but they'll never back down. The higher-ups gamble with lives on the line, but this time we're ready. This time we won't sign. High inflation's a weapon. They aim at the weak. They silence the truth, but the cracks start to speak. History repeats the same old charade, but we're the wildfire that cannot be swayed.
In the year 2031, deep beneath the Palais des Nations in Geneva, a sealed chamber known only as Committee Omega, convened for the third time that decade. The members were not the public faces of the United Nations. They were senior planners, demographers, and political strategists who answered to no elected government. The chair, a silver-haired woman named Elise Voss, opened a leather-bound dossier stamped with a single word: continuity. Europe's native fertility has collapsed below 1.4 in the core states, she said, project on the latest Eurostat projections. Without intervention, the cultural and political continuity of the continent's founding populations will erode within 2 generations. That continuity is no longer compatible with the long-term stability architecture we require. Migration was written at the height of the migrant crisis. It argued that large-scale arrivals of young men from countries with sharply different norms on gender and sexuality were producing elevated rates of sexual violence against European women, and that political elites were downplaying the pattern while restricting the freedom of native women rather than the freedom of perpetrators. A decade later, the core statistical pattern the article highlighted has not disappeared. Official data and peer-reviewed studies continue to show clear overrepresentation of certain foreign-born and non-Western groups among suspects and convicts for rape and serious sexual offenses in several Western and Northern European countries. In Sweden, a 21-year follow-up study of rape convictions, 2000 to 2020, found that individuals born outside Sweden who arrived at age 15 or older had more than 6 times the odds of conviction compared with native Swedes with 2 Swedish-born parents, even after controlling for socioeconomic status, psychiatric disorders, and prior criminality. Those with 2 foreign-born parents also showed elevated risk. Sweden still records among the highest rates of reported sexual violence in Europe. German Federal Criminal Police, BKA, figures for recent years show non-German nationals, roughly 15 to 17% of the population, accounting for roughly 36 to 40% of suspects in serious sexual offenses, with higher shares in some states, and in group rape cases. Rape and sexual assault numbers have risen substantially since 2018. Austria reports foreign nationals approaching half of rape suspects, while comprising about 1/5 of the population. In England and Wales, foreign nationals have been overrepresented in sexual offense convictions relative to their population share, with particular nationalities, including Afghan, Pakistani, and certain African groups, showing elevated rates in local and national data. These disparities are not uniform across all immigrant groups. Migrants from East Asia, some Latin American countries, and many Western nations typically show rates at or below the native average. The elevated risk is concentrated among young males from certain regions of the Middle East, North Africa, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and parts of sub-Saharan Africa, precisely the demographic profile that dominated the 2015 to 2016 inflows and subsequent secondary movements. Explanations remain contested. Age and sex composition. Young men commit most sexual violence everywhere. Socioeconomic disadvantage and higher reporting of stranger offenses all play roles. Yet studies that control for these factors still leave a residual gap. Cultural attitudes toward women, consent, and Western female behavior, attitudes that are mainstream rather than fringe in many source countries, are the factor the 2015 article emphasized and that subsequent research has not eliminated. Policy responses have partially shifted. Several governments have tightened asylum rules, expanded deportations for criminal convictions, and introduced more restrictive family reunification and labor migration criteria. Public debate is less constrained than it was in 2015 to 2016. Yet the underlying selection problem, large numbers of low-skilled young men from high misogyny environments, has not been fully corrected. Recorded sexual violence remains elevated in the countries that took the largest absolute numbers, and the political realignment toward parties prioritizing border control continues. The article's more sweeping claim of a deliberate elite desire to sacrifice Western women remains polemical. What has proven durable is the narrower, data-driven observation. When European states accept large cohorts of young men from societies that systematically devalue female autonomy, measurable increases in sexual offenses against native women follow. That pattern, first widely publicized in 2015, is still visible in official statistics in 2026.
We want a positive future. We want to be able to have children. We want to be able to have land, have homes, have farm animals, have friends and family that we love and hold very dearly and cherish so much. But the reality is famine. The reality is global war. The reality is technocracy. The reality is mass migration. Here's the thing. If you're awake to that, if you're awake to the problem, just like we talked about with Joe Kent with the alcoholic analogy, then you're able to recover from it. But as long as you continue to live in the delusion and to eat the Tic Tacs that the system gives you, you will never truly be able to make progress. And here's the thing. It is a wonderful thing to have disagreements, to debate things, but you cannot deny reality. And the reality is we are at full and total war. It's not just a war with missiles and drones and people in the Middle East. It's not just a war against Russia and Ukraine, a proxy war, the West versus Eurasia, Russia, China, you name it. It's not just the South China Sea. It is also the mass influx and inflow of third world populations that are from these destabilized and destroyed regions in the global South that are a direct consequence of the wars that we fight in large part for greater Israel. So that is the key. That is the thing to realize. Now, of course, not all of the mass migration is a result of that. Of course, we've covered George Soros since literally before I was alive. He is a huge part of that, as well as the leftist NGOs, USAID in the past, it's just been reformed to a new organization, and many other. And we're going to go to a report from my father talking about the conquering, the taking over of Spain. If we can go back to the video really quick before we go to the report, I just want to show people, okay? This is not the families. It's not the starving grandmother with the children. These are young men in their 20s, their 30s. These are combat age men. These are dudes coming over to conquest. They are coming over on a crusade. They're coming over on a takeover mission, and they are going to subsume Europe and take it over because they come from a region that is so destroyed and so destabilized, they don't know if they're going to get food or water the next day. You know what happens when you give those people welfare and resources? They have about a dozen kids. Okay. And this isn't something as to where it's like, oh, the Europeans don't have children anymore and their birth rate is so much higher. It's literally all because of the society they come from versus the society that we live in. Okay. We live in the lap of luxury. We live in a world where basically everybody, well, not in America, but in the West and Europe, a lot of these people are literate. A lot of these people are educated. A lot of these people are used to a high standard of living combined with civil rights. Ain't no civil rights in Bangladesh. Ain't no civil rights in Singapore. Ain't no civil rights in Sudan. Ain't no civil rights in Somalia. They just come over here, and it's literally like getting transported to heaven on earth. They have about 12 kids with the government's help, and then they implement their own culture, their own religion, because why would they assimilate? They never had to. They never could. So go ahead and play my father's report about the takeover of Spain.
Globalist-controlled replacement migration directed by the UN has gone into high gear. There's over 30 million Muslims and other invaders out of the Middle East and North Africa already in Europe, destroying it. And now over 3 million military-aged men in the last 5 years have come into Spain alone, and the new communist government announced this year that they're going to let unlimited numbers come in. Anybody that gets there gets free welfare, even more than citizens, everything paid for, with up to 50% unemployment for those under 30 in Spain. They are collapsing the country by design. And posted in this same post, you see footage of what was just landing yesterday, and more videos are coming in today, and they are landing and they are doing throat-slitting signs. They're screaming and yelling. They have no possessions other than debit cards the UN gives them, the NGOs, the Soros operations, Catholic charities, Jewish charities, the same one that Mayorkas used to run, same NGOs that flooded us are flooding Europe, and the Spanish government has said the doors are open. And once again, into Spain, they flood the rest of Europe. Remember, the Muslims conquered Spain for over 500 years, and that started the Crusades to kick them out. So this is globalist, UN, communist, BlackRock-funded systems allied with the Islamic globalist third world invasion. Unbelievable, and it's just going to get worse and worse until Europe totally collapses. Germany shut down their last nuclear reactors, shut down all their coal power plants. Mercedes can't even get energy to build cars. The U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline that supplied half of Europe's gas, or 45% of it. I mean, this is economic warfare against us all.
Let's go ahead and pause it right there.
Someone insulated here in the U.S.
Let's go ahead and pause it right there. We'll go back to it. Here's the thing. To all my mercy-hating, hell yeah, bomb Iran, bomb Middle East, kill them all. To all the people out there that feel that way, you actually want these migrants over here. You're rooting for them to come. That's what you support with your foreign policy. And that's not true. I deny that. I hate the migrants. I don't want them in my country. Well, you support the wars that lead to destabilization, mass famine in their countries, and then they come to the West. It's called problem, reaction, solution. You can't ignore it. You can't deny it. There it is on tape. Caught on tape. Problem, reaction, solution right there. That's your mass migration. That's your consequence of famine. That's your consequence of war. That's your consequence of general destabilization that allows for those NGOs and leftist groups to do things like this under cover of night, under cover of darkness, ultimately under the cover of blood, because when there's 1.5 million dead people in the Ukraine-Russia war, when there's thousands of dead people and dozens of dead American soldiers in the Iran war, people pay more attention to that than they do of hordes of military-age men coming into their country. Do you see the wives? Do you see the children? Do you see Nana on bended knee? No, you do not. You see guys looking like they could be in uniform tomorrow, and they probably will be. This is the classic Rome scenario. We're probably going to do this as well. Michael Yon, Mike Adams, Matt Bracken talk about this. The idea that our military would be of native stock for much longer is very, very ridiculous because, hey, these elite authoritarian governments that want to track, trace, and control us, they can just get Muhammad, Abdul, and Ganesh to do it just fine. And that'll be great. It'll be liberal, and everyone will sign off on it. And the 90-year-old boomers will pat themselves on the back, and then they'll probably get strangled by the Haitian orderly or something at the nursing home. It is what it is. It's a beautiful system. We are the world, right? We are the world. Keep playing it. Play the footage of the people running around. We are the world, we are the children, we are the military-aged men who come to kill you. We are invading your country. You will speak Arabic, you will speak Pakistani. It is time to be liberal, liberal, liberal. It is time to be liberal. And that's literally where we are. I'm not joking. It's just like the people that did like the we're going to get your children thing, and of course like we're going to vaccinate you thing, like the Dr. Fauci Hitler worship songs and all of that. They need to write the songs about the mass migration. And I'm calling for people on the right to do that right now, because that's what happens when you support these wars. This is what you support. My little migrant buddies from all the wars that I support, they're coming to be my friend and rape my wife. And that's where we are. So I see my dad on the phone there. What's going on there? Crew, can you tell me what's up there? Maybe he wants to join us. All right, we're going to be joined by my dad shortly. It's just key to point this out. Day over day over day, this has not just started happening. This has happened for decades, and we got our own version of this on our southern border, okay? I want you to keep in mind, Joe Biden immediately told people, when I am president, immediately surged the border. It is widely reported that over 20 million people came here, many of them not from Mexico, not from Latin America, not from South America, but from the Middle East, from Africa, from Asia, from Eurasia, from West Asia, from places like where these people are coming from. And it's literally like dealing with Martians, all right? There's a Mexican, wears a sombrero, wants to do some work, whatever, right? Catholic Christian background. This is like unheard of stuff that you've never seen before. It's coming for you in your backyard right now. And anyone that denies it denies the societal-wide program. So we're being joined by my father, Alex Jones. Dad, how are you doing?
Rex, I just wanted to give people some background here, and we can take this clip from me live on the show and add a year ago and 6 months ago, the president, the communist leader of Spain said, we're legalizing 3 million North African, mainly Muslims, military-aged men, 90+% commit mass crime. We're legalizing them, and anybody else that can get here is going to be legal from here on out. So literally hundreds of thousands a month are hitting. This all happened just yesterday and is ongoing today. We'll play the Fox newscast in a minute. But I noticed when I shot a report about this earlier, I was flooded with bots on X saying, I'm making it up, show my proof, this is AI, this is not real. Spain was invaded by the Moors, same people out of North Africa, conquered for 500 plus years. They took over 2 million women as slaves, sex slaves. La Reconquista took hundreds of years to retake Spain, then it expanded into the Middle East. The Crusades came out of the La Reconquista, the reconquering of Spain. So again, this is the left literally telling us none of this is happening when they're running the actual invasion. These are all military-age men. They are literally there to rape and kill and do whatever they want. They're all signed up for welfare. The Spanish government says that they're all legal. They want to replace the Spanish with these people, that these are better. This is what the left votes for. This is who they are. And this is the reality of what we're facing. So I want to play this Fox newscast with the same NGOs running this, are the same NGOs running this around the world, running the attacks and the invasion that we're witnessing here as well. So this is what we're facing. This is the reality. Face it, this is the globalist attack. This is one of the main ways the UN said they'd use migration flows. The UN said that they would use these other systems to do this over and over and over and over again. And so this is where we are right now in the year 2026, and people just need to get with the program and realize this is happening and just get out of their denial. They said we'll use migrant flows, viruses, and wars to do it, collapse the world economy, bring in the central bank digital currencies. That's the plan for the entire West. We need Crusades 2.0 just to secure our republics and kick these people out now. Here's the Fox newscast, and then we'll take this report and we'll put in the Spanish government admitting this invasion plan, and the rest of it posted to X and Rumble, and then you, the Paul Reveres, will share it. Here's the Fox News report. Back to you, Rex.
Thank you, Dad.
Really wild video here. Chaos at the border of Spain's North African enclave in Morocco. This is a city called Ceuta. You're watching as thousands of migrants break through the fence and completely overwhelm the border police. Their video showing huge groups of people, mostly young military-age guys, cramming into inflatable tubes or arriving on shore another way, some of them wading in the water as they break through the gates to get to the other side. Sandra, this is reminiscent of kind of what we saw during the open border during the Biden administration through 2021, 2024, kind of similar to what we saw in Del Rio back in 2021. The socialist agenda, their platform literally says they want to abolish borders, abolish immigration enforcement, have complete freedom of movement. This is what it looks like in another country if they get what they want. Notice there is no resistance from the government whatsoever. These people are coming in without any obstruction. And if people don't know, Spain has a very left-wing government. Earlier this year, they did a big amnesty program for over 1 million illegal immigrants living in the country. They had 1.3 million illegal immigrants apply for that amnesty program between April and June. So that's what we call a pull factor, Sandra. They're looking for something like that. They know if they can just get their foot in the country, maybe someday that left-wing government will do another amnesty program. And you were just reading some of the wires. The locals want an emergency declaration. It sounds like
the ministry's saying no, they will not deploy military to the border.
Apparently they don't think this is an emergency. I mean, look at this. This is a total free-for-all.
It does feel like we are looking at a few years ago when you're reporting at the border here in the United States. This is happening right now. This story is breaking right now. And you're not just talking about hundreds, thousands of migrants are pouring over the borders as we speak.
Yeah, and again, I mean, just look here. Do you see any women or children? I mean, most people would call these folks so-called asylum seekers. These are all young guys just flooding into the country and overwhelming what, if any, border there is. It looks like there's just kind of a small barbed wire fence or something like that. But you can see the Spanish government was caught completely off guard here, and you have thousands of these men. I mean, it literally looks like, you often hear the word invasion, but it literally looks like one here. Look at that. I mean, you see the border fence there. They're all just going around it. And again,
the head of Spain's civil guard is calling this absolute chaos. In a brand new interview, he said, quote, "It's not possible to give precise numbers, but there are thousands of migrants crossing right now." He added that the border has totally collapsed, quote unquote.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. And for folks who don't know where this is a small Spanish city, autonomous in North Africa. It's actually in Morocco, but it does have Spanish autonomy. It's called Ceuta. So this isn't on the mainland of Spain. But these images, we've been looking at them on social media all morning. It's just stark to see that there is no resistance whatsoever. I mean, at least in Del Rio back in 2021, when those 20,000 Haitians were crossing the river, similar images to this, you had some border patrol there. You had Texas DPS there trying to stop them. Here in Spain, there is absolutely nothing stopping these folks from wading ashore and climbing the fences. And Sandra, look at that in the background. I mean, there are thousands upon thousands of these men just flooding the country.
Yeah. Yeah, so they say, oh, it looks like an invasion. It looks like one. It is one. Like, you have to be objectively real with what you're seeing and what people are saying there. Obviously, those men are not there to, find a loaf of bread for their children that are right behind them or for their nana that's right there. They're there to take over. And you know what? They have the right to do that because nobody's stopping them. Look, the police are holding open the gate. Click on that. Let's make that a little bit bigger, please. The police are holding the gate open for the invading migrants. And once you reach this level in your society, look at them in their uniforms. Oh, I bet you said something about COVID. They threw you in jail. Oh, I bet, well, maybe not Spain because they're pretty critical of Israel, but in other EU nations where they do the same thing, you talk about the migrants, they put you in jail. Talk about Israel, they put you in jail. But they'll open the door for people that have paid nothing into your country, have no tie to your country, no historical claim to be there. And they will say not only do they have the same rights as you, they have more rights than you. They're better people than you because they've had to suffer more. And it's your fault, white person, that they've had to suffer more. It's not the fault of the evil world Jewry or the world government or the transnational capital that runs everything. It's certainly not. It's your fault. It's your fault because these are your nations and they did somehow slavery or something, so you're bad. Let's just leave at the door the fact that these are literally the people from North Africa, the Arab people that pioneered and ran the slave trade. All right. And like my dad just said, conquered Spain for 400 years. This is the same thing talk about Michael Yon. Really the same thing talk about with Joe Kent. The historical patterns, the cycles, they just happen over and over and over again. And there seems to be no stopping them, even in this information age where, hey, everybody watching this right now knows what I'm saying is true and they're able to follow it. But people in these countries, this is why we have to appreciate the First Amendment here in America, they truly do not know. They have been so co-opted, so cowed, so propagandized. They've been taught that this is normal. And hey, in 1 to 2 generations, those countries won't exist anymore. Do we want the same fate for ourselves here in America? Absolutely not. The migrant problem under Joe Biden, completely outrageous. Over 20 million people came here, surged the border. The government will never pull work permits, pull their ability to buy a car, pull their ability to get a mortgage, buy a house, do whatever. They'll never touch any of that because, as Trump says, he's got friends in big ag and friends in hospitality. And just like the Epstein files, when Trump's friends are going to get hurt, he doesn't actually do the thing he promised to do.
I'm going to tell you.
Red alert. The Iran war has now engulfed the entire region and is designed to collapse all of the Gulf states to make way for the Greater Israel Project. And Trump on Benas Mott Watch share full interview.
We have reached the point of no return. Trump has no exit ramp. This is by design to make way for the Greater Israel Project.
You got one! I want to bring Michael Yon in, who is a world traveler, actually lives in Japan and in Dripping Springs, Texas, part of the year. And he is a former Green Beret A-team operator, and he, of course, is leading combat journalist and photographer. Some of the most incredible photos ever embedded for decades. Saw a lot more combat being embedded with our military around the world than he ever saw when he was a Green Beret in Europe. And then, of course, he's a geopolitical expert and predicted everything that's now unfolding and happening. I want to not so much into the strategic areas. We've kind of broken that down, but Trump being exacerbated, wanting an exit ramp. Iran saying, we don't trust you to make a deal. We're going to keep the strait closed. We're going to win by attrition. They're now telling, the Pentagon's telling Trump, as they did before the war started, that you're having a strategic defeat. You may be having tactical victories, but those are battles. You're not winning the war. So he's learning what the British learned fighting George Washington, not comparing the Iranians to George Washington in their beliefs, but in their tactical activities of perseverance. This is a basic understanding of war. You don't just have siege of a city. You have a guerrilla force that is able to hold on and sap the resources of a larger foe. And in the end, you always win. As the Romans said, our enemies are not defeated until they recognize themselves as such. We were never defeated because we will never recognize ourselves as defeated. There's another way of saying it. Resistance is victory. So let's talk big picture. No off-ramps here, where this is going with the great Michael Yon. Michael, thank you for being here with us today.
Hey, Alex. Well, the last time I saw you, I was in your studio, so now I'm over here. So, man, what an epic way to start the day with Israeli forces going AWOL. I didn't expect that. And from devil worshippers of all things. Well, you know, no off-ramps is right, because that's not what this is meant to be. This is the big target with this, as you well know, is the United States. United States is being expended in this war. And you saw, by the way, I think you talked about it earlier about the Saudis bombed Iraq.
Yes. Please elaborate with your geopolitical expertise. Go wherever you want. Give us an assessment, please, sir.
Oh, good. I spent a couple of years running around Iraq, so I'm pretty familiar with those areas. And you see the pilgrims to Karbala being bombed allegedly by Saudi Arabia, which of course would widen this with the Shia majority around those areas. A huge amount of people are Shia, right? And so the Wahhabists who would have, this is quite fascinating. You know, I've published numerous times that I would expect at some point, or let's say a high probability, that Mecca and Medina would be, let's say, attacked. And Mecca and Medina, of course, are in Saudi Arabia. There's huge, obviously, pilgrimages to those every year, the Hajj and that sort of thing. But, you know, what you mentioned earlier, Alex, about, you know, basically getting everybody into a big fight, that's part of the plan. I think all these countries in the Middle East, or let's say not the Middle East, but in the Gulf states, not including Iran, but the Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, actually, UAE. I think that those will likely not exist when this is over. Likely. I think that because I think that that appears to be part of the plan. Of course, with the greater Israel, that would include taking out Jordan. That would include taking out Lebanon, which is being done right now. Gaza, of course, much of Syria, most of Syria, a big, huge part of Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. Now, back to Iraq, I would not be surprised. I think I mentioned this to you, to see Mosul Dam at some point be destroyed. Mosul Dam, you know, if Israel wants to take, basically Israel's going supernova at this point. They're clearly collapsing. The country's not doing well. It's sick. The Israelis are spreading around the world. They're going to Argentina and Guatemala and Panama and Thailand and Philippines, the United States, of course. They're going to Greece. They're going all over the world. They're abandoning ship. And now we just saw, I just learned about this when I was just watching you talk about how these Israeli soldiers just abandoned their post, actually, which is pretty interesting in a time of war. But I think what we're going to see is countries such as, the Iranians apparently have been attacking the desalinization plants in Kuwait, which actually in the desalinization plants in Kuwait, when you attack those, you're also attacking their electrical grid because they're co-sanguinated. But
by the way, Michael, you're skipping around, giving them all the facts, which is incredible. You predicted all this months ago and weeks ago that it would pop off in Iraq next. Now that's happened. And that's why the Saudis are getting involved. Israel's ministers have said we can blow up the Al-Aqsa Mosque and blame it on an Iranian missile to trigger a Shiite Sunni civil war. They could also hit Mecca or Medina and trigger that. Israel's also said they want a new 9/11 They didn't say they'll stage it, very thinly veiled. They've also said that Iran wants to kill Trump. They could easily kill Trump and then use that to nuke Iran. I'm really concerned they're going to assassinate Trump, a deep state coalition with Israel, to launch a full war, or do a false flag nuke in New York or off Tel Aviv, say on a barge or something. They've already pre-programmed that to go to full nuclear war, cause a civil war in the region. Once it all collapses, then Israel can move in, put in new governments. Their finance minister said last week, this is the ideal situation, having chaos and the U.S. in the middle of it. They don't even hide this. So give us a 35,000-foot view first. It's like a Green Beret. You're walking through all the pieces and where this spiraling is going. And is there any off-ramp? Because Trump more and more, not to his credit, I'm just saying, is signaling he wants an off-ramp from my sources inside the White House. And now that's confirmed in the news. But Iran, again, knows they hold the cards, so they're not going to back down. So when the immovable object comes into the unstoppable force, you get an explosion. Michael Yon, give us your 35,000-foot view.
Right. I don't see any off ramp. I don't see that happening at all. I mean, obviously everything is possible, but I'm not seeing the actual route to an off ramp. This is not meant to have an off ramp. Actually, when did Israel mention about attacking Mecca and Medina? I didn't see that, but I've been suspecting that may happen for a while.
No. They've had Israeli ministers say we could blow up a bunch of them on TV. They've said we ought to drop a missile on Alaska, where the Second Temple's under it, the rubble, when Titus sacked it. And they said we can blow that up and trigger a Shiite-Sunni civil war. So I'm just saying, extrapolating out to Mecca and Medina and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, so that's okay. This is you saw the alleged attack from Saudi Arabia and the United States on the pilgrims related to Karbala today, right? Now there's the opening. There's your entree right there to go ahead and attack Mecca and Medina and blame it on Iran, right? Which is what I've been expecting.
Explain what that means. Explain what that means. Explain what that means. People that don't know, you get some Shiites killed. Now that sets the false flag up to claim Iran hits the holy sites in Saudi Arabia.
Right, exactly. So basically it's a, sort of Catholics versus
Remember,
Protestants.
not everybody's a famous geopolitical Green Beret, 30 years, 40 years, running around the planet with armies. So you have to explain this to people. We have a smart audience, but you need to really explain it.
Right. So basically putting it in Christian terms, it's basically like Catholics versus Protestants, so you're hitting basically you would basically hit the Vatican and hit wherever the Protestants are all over the place, but you're basically attacking their holiest spots to get those to fight each other, like has happened before with Catholics. You go up to Belfast, and they still got a wall between Catholics and Protestants. But it's similar with Muslims, with Sunni and Shia, right? Basically, it's a direct equivalent, actually. And so there's been a serious effort to get those guys fighting each other, Sunni versus Shia. But this is part of a larger destruction program, right? And keeping those guys, there's not a single train in the Middle East, by the way, that crosses borders. I mean, and that was part of an old game to keep these people all separated. But what I think is happening, Alex, is the depopulation that you've talked about many times. Global depopulation is unfolding, and in service to that, getting rid of that energy over there, getting rid of the fertilizer capacity and those trade routes is very helpful in causing global famine, right? I think more broadly from that area of the world, Middle East, but shooting over to Strait of Malacca, I think that's going to get closed. I think the Turkish Strait's going to get closed. The Bosphorus, Dardanelles, I think you're going to see those closed, right? At some point in Danish Strait, I think you're going to see that closed. I think you're going to end up seeing attacks on Hamburg at some point. This is big, Alex. You know this. You talked about this stuff for years, and here it comes. And so I think what we're seeing here, that attack apparently on pilgrims in Iraq today, is part of that. Just rattling the box, getting the Sunni and the Shia to really fight each other madly, which that could spread to other countries. By the way, that could spread to. Of course, like in Pakistan and India. I mean, this could spread all over the place. This won't be confined. If you get the Sunni versus Shia fighting on a large scale, these things could unfold in the United States, of course.
And let me add two data points to that. Exactly. Let me add two data points of your expertise on that. I want to bring Rex in with his questions. You had Trump 2 weeks ago saying he may send in al-Qaeda that we put in charge of Syria when Trump was not even president-elect. It was done by Biden, NATO, with Turkey and Israel. They put the head of al-Qaeda in there. They've exterminated more Christians and more Alawite Muslims and others. He said we may send in al-Qaeda into Lebanon. Israel says they're going to take all of Lebanon. They're going to take large parts of Syria, greater Israel. They've uncloaked. They admit that, mask off to stir people up. How does that tie in now that we see them activating, as you said, the al-Qaeda armies for this? And how do the Muslims not see through this when it's so transparent? I remember, we exposed on 9/11 how the West was running Israel and the U.S., al-Qaeda. Now it's all declassified and admitted. It's crazy how Lindsey Graham, it turned out through USA and the State Department, was their main funder along with John McCain while he claimed he was fighting him. I mean, so this is just nakedly out in the open. They're gearing up. It's already started a massive Muslim civil war that will then lay the way for a greater Israel. This is so cold-blooded and just absolutely disgusting.
Right. I mean, they're trying to foment a civil war between the Muslims in service to the Greater Israel Project, and also in service to global famines. Now, I think they're going to just genocide Lebanon just the way, the Zionists are going to genocide Lebanon just the way that they've genocided Gaza. And again, that's part of the Greater Israel Project. They're going to end up in a fight with obviously going for Egypt and Turkey as well, which is, at some point they may have bitten off. There you go. There's the patch right there, the Greater Israel. It doesn't include the whole map, by the way. If you look down there at New Somalia and that sort of thing, near the Bab al-Mandeb, you can see that will be another part of this. The Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society is moving people out of Somalia into the United States and Europe. But you can see Egypt there as part of the Greater Israel Project. This is why I wonder what their plans. They must have put a lot of consideration into Aswan Dam. Will they destroy Aswan Dam or try to collect it up? I don't know. What will the Zionists do with Aswan Dam? What will they do with Mosul Dam? I think they're going to destroy Mosul Dam, but we'll wait and see. But they could destroy Mosul Dam and then blame it on the Iranians. That would be child's play to do that as well, especially once you get a civil war going. Now, keep in mind, if you blow up Mosul Dam, there you go. There's Netanyahu holding up the map. But if they blow up Mosul Dam, that will do significant damage to the population of Iraq. And I just think they'll go for it. And also, keep in mind, World War I, the biggest part of World War I, the huge spark that got that going was not Prince Ferdinand or Archduke Ferdinand.
It was the Ottoman Empire.
That's right. It was that railway right through Mosul, right? It was that railway that goes right through the Berlin to Baghdad railway that would eventually go to Basra, right? And then there's oil terminals down Abot and Kayat. I've been on those oil terminals. Those are right off.
Let me raise this for people. Remember, you're very sophisticated. I'm not just hearing that's just true. And we have smart listeners. A lot of them are following you. Some aren't, because I can barely follow you, and I'm pretty well informed. So you got to get down at our level here. Wars never really end. They just pause, as you know, and historically, and especially in the modern age. And so all the same things like herpes is coming back to the surface. There's a big flare-up here, and all the same preparations are being made for an even bigger explosion. And so that's where we are, is at this jumping off point. And I know you're just done with Trump. You don't even care. Like he doesn't matter. Like he's a puppet, which I get. But we can put pressure on his administration. I don't think Trump has any idea that he's been set up to take the fall for this giant war that's already started in the history books. And the people he thought were his buddies are his absolute sworn enemies, as Tucker warned him many times. I mean, it's just, my hope is that Trump could wake the hell up that he's been set up and doesn't keep like a degenerate gambler doubling down, that somehow he can put the brakes on Israel, cut the money off, the weapons off, make a deal with Iran and pull out of this now. Because the Iranians have to know, yeah, they're winning a strategic, battle now, but if they force us into total war, Israel intends to win this in the end and intends to make it so bad we've got to send in troops and nukes. It's an insane gamble, but I think the Iranians need to come to their senses and not gamble and make some type of deal with Trump. Do you think there's any way of that happening?
No. I don't see an off-ramp, Alex, because I don't see, that's not the energy in the system that we're seeing. This is, again, as you just mentioned, this is it's like a herpes outbreak. I've been calling it an inflection point, but I may start calling it a herpes outbreak, but because this is a long war, and there are outbreaks like the Great War. World War I was an outbreak, actually. This is the same war as World War I, by the way. This is the same war as World War II. These are all the same war. It's just they have different names and that sort of thing, but this is the exact same war, and it's never ended, and it's not. There's no end in sight that I see, as long as there's humans in that area. And it doesn't matter, by the way, as we mentioned before. It doesn't matter if you take all the people out of there that are there now and replace them with somebody else. The people that are there will end up fighting, because the routes and resources they're going to fight for those routes and resources.
Hi, Leon, stay there. You're totally on target. People are learning about real warfare, real geopolitics, just like World War II never ended between Ukraine and Russia. It's the same story.
There is a massive sale going on right now at thealexjonesstore.com. Huge. Ultimate summer sale. 50% off Ultimate Power, Freedom Mango, and Patriot Punch. Methylene Red capsules. This is a proprietary product. It would take an hour to get into Ultra Methylene Red. The capsules are now in. Mind Fueled Nootropic Energy Shots, all 50% off. 40% off Zeolite Tincture, detoxifying, gut spike protein, and it's good for your whole body, getting heavy metals out. Methylene Blue Tincture, 40% off. CMOS Gummies, 40% off. Shilajit Gummies, 40% off. Methylene Blue Gummies, 40% off. Ultimate Chill, and a whole bunch of other big discounts as well. 30% off all apparel. The widest selection of Patriot shirts of every different design, configuration. It is the widest selection. It's over 800 different shirts. It's ridiculous. The new line that I designed is, I think, pretty good. Rebel Scum since 1776. The Betsy Ross flag, less 1984, more 1776 in muscle shirts. A whole bunch of other really cool stuff now at thealexjonesstore.com. I love this lightweight so-called dress shirt, but it's a very special type of shirt from a great manufacturer. We now have the boxer shorts, and they're not boxer like underwear. The classic boxer shorts that aren't long and aren't short. They're just kind of medium. They're my favorite type. I picked these out. I picked the brand. I said, this is the type of short I like. We're adding a lot of new apparel at thealexjonesstore.com. And every order right now, and it's about to end in the next few days, gets a free mystery t-shirt. You just put your size in, you get a free mystery t-shirt with every order that's $29 or more at thealexjonesstore.com. That is a hell of a deal right now. We've got the Silver Collectible 250-year anniversary with the amazing Jerusalem cross. Those are going to be gone soon. TheAlexJonesStore.com, and you stand with us, and you know that all the great work we're doing is because of you. You are the reason we're here. You are the InfoWar. TheAlexJonesStore.com.
Now, I do something occasionally that irritates listeners, and it irritates me too. But you notice when I have a guest on who's covering stuff I know the general public understands, I have a really good grasp of that. I don't interrupt them. Sometimes I'll go 10 minutes and the guest will say, are you there? And I'm like, yeah, I'm listening. Michael Yon has such an incredible grasp of geopolitics, history, how it's all interconnected, real war theory. And I've read hundreds of books on this myself. He knows way more than I do. That I know, am not being insulting. Some of it was going over my head. I know, slow down. And then he started elaborating. World War I was just a continuation of the old empire's war. World War II was that. This is mainline history. We get to PhD level. Just like Ukraine was the Catholics split in the West and the East, the Orthodox, and that was where a lot of the main battles happened, and the main gateway for Barbarossa in 42 into Russia. That's why it's so important to Russia. So it's continuation. That's why the Azov Battalion are the grandkids of the Nazis. It's why all these ministers and people are the grandkids of Nazis. They are Nazis when the Russians say that. And then you have the standing ovation a few years ago of the SS officer that on record actually did massacre people, thousands at a time, throwing them in graves, Poles and Ukrainians. And they said he fought the Russians in World War II, and they all get up and clap. Now, they couldn't all be that ignorant in the Canadian Parliament that the Russians were on our side in World War II. No, they are saying we are for the Nazis. We are for that. And now you have Laura Loomer. I'm not even attacking her. It just shows, I think, her own ignorance or whatever's going on. She meets with the founder and the head of the Azov Battalion. We'll put the shot on screen and says, he's not a Nazi. Look, I'm Jewish. He didn't hurt me. Well, his leader is Jewish, Zelensky. Zelensky 4 years ago got asked, hey, you got a lot of Nazis in the Azov battalion. He said, they're Ukrainians too. So it's not debatable. It's not like he's a dragon going to eat you because you're Jewish. The point is he is the Nazi contingent. They do blood and soil, Heil Hitler stuff. They do all the rituals, all the torch-lit things at night. They admit that. They have the same insignia of the Ukrainian Nazis in World War II. That is not debated. That is a fact. And so, and I'm only showing this to show the continuation of history and how Laura Loomer is so over the top with her gaslighting, or maybe she's just this ignorant, that she's over there saying, look, he's not a Nazi, he's nice. I'm Jewish, he's being friendly to me. This is next level insanity. Here's a clip of the SS officer, almost 100 years old, getting a standing ovation. Then the Russians wanted him extradited as a Nazi war criminal. They said no. Undebated Nazi. Simon Wiesenthal didn't hunt down real Nazis. Klaus Barbie, the Angel of Death, Dr. Mengele, they were all allowed to live in South America. We got thousands and thousands, 36,000 Nazis over here to run all of our programs. Then in World War II, Operation Paperclip. And I'm not saying it's a Nazi conspiracy. I'm saying they were brought into the globalist system because of their understanding of the Russian networks and fighting that. And then she's over there I think she's just ignorant, literally saying this guy's not a Nazi when our own State Department says they are Nazis and that's a part of their main army. Here's the clip, just for historical context, of the SS officer being given a standing ovation.
Zelensky's speech received at least a dozen standing ovations. There was also one for this man, a 98-year-old Ukrainian Canadian who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians during the Second World War.
The origin of this invite is one of the many unanswered mysteries pertaining to Nazigate. Apparently, it was the Hunka family that reached out to Mr. Rhoda, suggesting that it would make for a whiz-bang photo op to have Hunka Sr. lauded in the House of Commons when Zelensky dropped by for a fundraiser, a visit. Did the Hunka family not consider that in this day and age of the internet, people might do a little investigating on the Googler machine and dredge up some really embarrassing details? Not that the mainstream media could be bothered to do so last week, mind you. It was my beloved big boss man, Ezra Levant, that got the Nazigate ball rolling last weekend by simply doing some basic mathematics, which is to say, if someone is fighting against the Russians prior to May 8th, 1945, that means you were on the wrong side of history.
Now, what's important is he was an SS officer who did take part in documented mass machine gunnings and throwing people into mass graves. Where Zelensky's gone and put plaques up for the dead. This is unbelievable. A true dyed-in-the-wool, thoroughbred Nazi, standing ovation because he fought the Russians in World War II. That's how stupid they think we are. Now, getting back to Michael Yon, I'm going to turn the baton over to him and Rex to get into all of this. When Joe Kent comes on, Rex, please ask him about off-ramps. He's been trying to get off-ramps. I know Jan's saying there's too much kinetic energy like a hurricane, that this is going down. I agree with that overall, but we've still got to pull out of this at some point. So we'll be looking at all of that. But getting back to this being a continuation, Lawrence of Arabia, World War I, the drawing of the maps, the creating of the modern Middle East. Israel wants to implode that, bring in a greater Israel. They want us to fight and die in it. This is an acceleration of the original World War that we're just entering the third act of right now. Please support us at thealexjonesstore.com. A huge sale, 50% off methylene red, other great products about to end. Also, we have the new RX site, 1776rx.health, where you can get the Menbezidol and the ivermectin combo together. Nothing like it for anti-parasiticals and so much more. Just research what Menbezidol is also known to do. What is Menbezidol associated with in the studies? You'll be blown away what they don't want you to know. 1776rx.health, and you're funding our operation and what we're doing. This is real pharmaceutical grade from a pharmacy. There's a lot of fake stuff out there that costs even more. This is a great deal, and it funds our operation. Get yours now at 1776rx.health. And without further ado, that's why I was jumping in on Jan, because He's a little bit moving so fast here. That's why you got to do big picture for folks and then explain, because most people don't understand that the world wars never ended. They don't know that Korea never ended. It's officially still a war. They don't understand the real geopolitical stuff. We're not putting people down. Our audience is very sophisticated, but even the sophisticated ones would have trouble following you because it's at a PhD level. Please, Michael Yon, continue on. And now Rex Jones enters the situation here as the co-host. Rex Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. What you're talking about is Sykes-Picot, right? It's all these lines that Britain and the U.S. drew to, decide who was going to be where and who was going to run what. And essentially what we did with Saudi Arabia is we gave a certain Bedouin tribe, authority over the money and the country and the property and everything there. And as long as they agreed to abide by our system, everything was all good. Now we're seeing that kind of fall apart. We're seeing the enforcement of that old system fail from the West. Michael Yon, you talk about human osmotic pressure a lot, right? That would be the mass migration caused by conflicts like this. I was seeing footage out of Spain this morning that was truly horrific. I guess there's a mass migrant wave coming from Morocco. Now, this may be unrelated. I don't think it's unrelated to what's happening in the Middle East as a whole. This is the type of thing at large for many countries it's going to result as a consequence of us being involved in this conflict. What do you think of that?
Right. I mean, some were coming through Ceuta, right? That's, I think, Ceuta right there. Right. I went down to Ceuta actually with Chuck Holton. We went to the Morocco side of it. Ceuta and Melilla, those are two Spanish cities in Morocco. So two Spanish EU cities are actually in Africa, right? So if you get into those cities, you're actually in the EU. And so we went up there anyway, there's a wall around those cities, but and there was huge amounts of aliens camped outside of Ceuta when we went there. Fascinating. You mentioned T.E. Lawrence, by the way, or Alex did.
Yes,
and it's interesting. I just happened to be. I was looking at this last night. The 7 Pillars of Wisdom. T.E. Lawrence. This is a really incredible book, by the way. I was just looking at it last night, and he just happened to mention it. But when you're looking at what's going on here, when we look at the Nazis that we were just talking about. The Nazis and the Zionists have been working together closely for a long time. They're that tight together, right? The Nazis, the Nazis were trying to get Jews out of Germany, and the Zionists were trying to get Jews into Israel. And so the Zionists were killing a lot of Jews there, and a lot of Zionists actually are Jews, obviously. But so the Zionists and Jews who are not Zionists have been killing each other for more than a century. And this is well documented. I've got a book here somewhere. I had it out a couple of days ago. But it's about how the Zionists and the Nazis cooperated, right? Actually, this book is written by a Jewish author. But the fact is, a lot of the Zionists and the Nazis moved down to Argentina, where they're at now. In fact, I was doing these meetings once a week for a while when we were down there, and they were in the old Nazi embassy. And this is a bunch of Jewish guys going to the meeting. There it is. Yeah, that's I've got that book. It's quite fascinating. But it's clear that the Zionists down in Argentina are working to gin up a war with Brazil, and that's in service to the larger war, the same war that we keep talking about in the Middle East. It's all the same war. And but again, the Zionists and the Nazis, they work hand in glove. And the idea that they don't is completely false.
Yeah, I totally agree. I see this all as already a world war. There are people that deny it's even a regional war. They'll call it a conflict. They'll say, it's what, as Trump said, it's a detour. We got to take a detour. It's an excursion. And obviously, we're talking about not just our lack of munitions now. We've expended nearly all of our defense and a lot of our offensive capability, but also just the cost of American lives. I've heard this argument from a few people. They say, well, we lose more American soldiers in training exercises and accidents. We've only lost 18 men and women in this conflict so far. Michael Yon, you're a combat veteran, military man. What do you say to that?
Well, this is just the beginning. I think we're going to see a draft, and I think they're going to work to kill off our people, and then draft people into our military that will be able to do genocide at home. That's clearly the direction that this is going. This is much more than a few little firefights or missiles going back and forth. This is a massive war, and like your father said, Alex, this is like a herpes outbreak. It's part of the same old war, but I call them inflection points, but I might start calling them herpes outbreaks. But I mean, but they're, it can be quite significant though. And in this case, I'm guessing they'll end up being billions dead from famines and whatnot. When the famines really start, we can see we're heading that direction. If and when they start, the so-called migration, the weaponized migration, the human osmotic pressure, that push and the pull of migration will be intense, right? So places like Ceuta and Melilla, well, they'll just be overran, and Spain is being overrun now. Of course, the Zionists hate Spain, and they're very open about hating, Ireland and some of the other places, and they threaten them often with doing exactly what's doing. They invade them with so-called migrants to, Camp of the Saints style, actually destroy all of Europe and the United States. Keep in mind, the Israelis are helping people invade the United States, and they openly do this. HIAS, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, it brings in huge numbers. They've got an office down in Darien Gap. They've got a building right next to China Camp. I mean, I've been there many times, like 100. I mean, it's all the time. And took I took congressmen down. I took Laura Loomer down there. Actually, Laura Loomer was at the highest building, right? She was actually there. And actually she talked, I have video of Laura talking with an Iranian, and it's on video. I published it before several times. Ann Vandersteel was there. I made video. She was talking with an Iranian that HIAS was helping that Iranian get to the United States. And that guy he looked like, he's a serious guy. You should see the video. I can send it to you. But yeah, and so HIAS is helping Iranians invade the United States. Not just Iranians, they're helping Chinese, they're helping Bangladeshis and people from about 150 countries.
Because it's about the collapse of the West. It's about importing whatever third world population, various populations. The goal is not to have something homogenous. It's to have as many different factions and groups as possible to cause chaos. I think this is very obvious, but never for them. Never for them. They don't have to take any migrants. They don't have to, deal with the Palestinians and give them a state. They just say, hey, we're going to kill them all, genocide them all, and then you're going to take the refugees. I think this is quite shocking language as well. I hear this all the time from people over there. Somehow it's our responsibility, and I would say it is because we've helped kill the people over there. Michael, what do you think about just the expansion of the war? Saudi Arabia joins the U.S. and strikes on Iran-backed militias in Iraq. I'm sure you saw this story. What's your take on what's happening there?
That's in service to getting the big war going between Sunni and Shia. Right. Keep in mind, that can be global. That can unfold. When the United States formed, a lot of, the battles that we were having in the United States were, imported, right? They were imported from Europe. That was part of a world war. I mean, our revolution was actually part of a larger world war. Again, we have two wars that we call world wars, but there's been many wars that were actually, the whole thing it's not these inflection points, let's say, they're components of a global war that's been going on for 500 years, a good 400 years, certainly since, roughly around 1500. The Treaty of Tordesillas that the Pope brokered between Spain and Portugal in 1494, that was, you might say, the beginning of maritime world war, right? Where it was really starting to get big, where the Pope divided the world into two, between this is the Portuguese side. That's why Brazil speaks Portuguese today. And then on the Spanish side, on the other side of that line. And then about 30 years later came up with the Treaty of Saragossa, which is another line, which, put Japan on the Portuguese side. I'm in Japan now, right? So that's why the Japanese ended up down in Nagasaki, and they brought in their craziness, and the Japanese chopped them up with swords and said, get out of here. So, but they called them Nanban, Southern barbarians. But then later, that's what the Japanese called the Portuguese. But then later, the Dutch came and did not push religion. They just did trade, and they were allowed to stay. But anyway, that's part of the same war, is what I'm getting to. There's no difference in these the century after century. It's just there are inflection points, and the parties sometimes change. Like the Dutch East India Company is no longer a major player. The British East India Company is no longer a major player.
Right. Things evolve and mature. Things evolve and mature over time.
Right. So different crabs go into the hermit crab shells, right?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so like, what's the U.S. military's next goal objective with the gradual expansion of the regional war? Like, what do you see the next, 2 to 4 weeks as being? Are we going to see more of a stalemate, more of the tit for tat? Because we're kind of ending like the second phase of the conflict. The first phase, the initial 39 days of the war, like the full kinetic engagement, the full wrath of America, whatever you want to say. Then we enter into this kind of MOU era where 6 weeks ago, Uncle Trump comes out at the G7 and says, we're almost out of oil. We can't do this. We got to figure something out. And then a la the Treaty of Versailles, he ends up signing the MOU, right? And that didn't end up panning out. We've kind of returned to the tit for tat. Now we see that expanding with the strikes that Saudi Arabia is joining us in doing on Iran-backed militias in Iraq. And they say that's in response to Yemen's Houthis helping the Iraqi-backed militias. Michael Yon, what happens next?
Just continue to explode. As you and Alex were talking, your father were talking about earlier, our eyes have been taken out over there with the radars, right? You mentioned the cost of some of those radars, and they're gone. And so they have to put AWACS and other assets up there to even get an idea of what's going on. But our bases have been pushed back. Like headquarters at Bahrain's been destroyed. Fifth Fleet. I've been in that headquarters actually. The Secretary of Defense picked me up in Afghanistan and brought me over there, introduced me to the admiral in charge, Admiral Gorton, was his name. Secretary of Defense was Robert Gates at the time. I'd fly around with him sometimes and see things. But that's gone now. I mean, that headquarters is, so our bases have been pushed back. Iran is actually doing swimmingly in this, right? They could emerge from this as a world power, actually. Right. And they know that.
Well, that's the key, because all they have to do is control the strait. We have to implement regime change. This is a regime change war. And denying that on our side is incredibly dishonest. And that's the main thing that grinds my gears about the conflict. They literally told us on day one what this was about. Before day one, this has been Netanyahu's plan for 35 plus years. And the denial of, now it's just, we're going to control the strait, we're going to charge a fee so they don't charge a fee, it's better when we do it. We're ultimately not going to be able to implement any of that unless we take the country over. My thing is, how does that happen? Because everything I hear from the various geopolitical experts, including yourself, is that the military is depleted, the munitions are depleted, the bases are destroyed, the radar is out of commission. What does America do if Trump does decide, which it looks like he has, in my opinion, to stay involved in the conflict? Because we can say, like, it's all falling apart, but like, can it all fall apart forever? Can this happen for a whole nother year? What's the timeline there?
Trump doesn't run this war. I mean, the fight has been started and it's game on. It's out of his control. It's just out of his control. He can talk a big game. I think from here it's going to spread. I think eventually Malacca is highly threatened, and Strait of Malacca, I think, even Danish Strait up there, and that's very important. The Turkish straits, of course, Bosphorus, Dardanelles, Suez itself, Gibraltar, Panama, of course. I mean, all of these places are this is not about some local thing in the Middle East, which is huge. This is about global depopulation. This is much, much bigger than this. Can't be understood without looking at the macro view. Actually, on the macro view, things get more simple. They don't get more complex. Things are far more complex on the tactical level and the strategic level. But when you go to grand strategy, which is more what I talk about, it gets actually weirdly simpler. And for instance, that's how I was able to predict Strait of Hormuz would be closed in last July. I published it on my Substack, right? And many times I mentioned this, and even predicted the date of the attack very accurately, on my Substack. And so what I'm getting to is this is global. It's been going on for a long time. There is a clear push to keep in mind that the war has so many aspects to it. For instance, knocking the farmers off of their farms, fishermen out of their boats, screwworms coming back, Nord Stream blown up, Groningen closed. Groningen gas field, the biggest gas field in Europe, right? And so many things, there's so many components to this. Fertilizer plants burning down,
No, that's the key. That's the key, because why would the EU be spoiling for a war when they've destroyed their own domestic energy and manufacturing capability? It makes absolutely no sense, right? You're dooming yourself, literally. And you could say we're doing the same thing to a lesser extent. You're talking about Europe. What's this gas field that's closed?
Groningen. It's in Netherlands. Misako and I have been up there, and it's closed. I mean, it's the big. When I was saying that, I think I may have been on Jordan Peterson's show or somewhere. I said that, I think that they may close the Groningen gas field. Many people got upset. They're like, they're never going to close Groningen gas field. It's the biggest gas field in Europe. And I'm like, hello, That's why Nord Stream got blown up, which we also successfully predicted. Not just predicted, we were over. I had bought an iPad just to track Nord Stream flows. And it was just a dedicated iPad because it was a website that showed how many cubic meters per second we're going through. So Nord Stream Groningen is closed. That's, and when you add all these things, they're putting these ridiculous windmills all over the place, right? Which is all part of the fight. Taking farmers off of their farms. And in Netherlands, they use the excuse of nitrogen. They're saying there's too much nitrogen, but you just cross the border over to Germany because, Netherlands and Germany share a border, and you go into Germany and they don't talk about nitrogen anymore. They talk about carbon dioxide. You should see those windmills over in Netherlands. They're unbelievable, especially the ones that are out in the North Sea. Now, keep in mind, speaking of the North Sea, eventually there'll be a big fight over the North Sea. I'm not sure how that'll play out, but the North Sea, when it comes to routes and resources, the North Sea is it's a king daddy, right? There's been a lot of war over the North Seas in the past, and it's almost a sure bet that there'll eventually be wars up there again. And again, that would include Russia, obviously, and others. But
100%.
This war is planned. But why would they do this? You mentioned this is important. The leadership, so-called leadership that's been installed, they're just a bunch of robots, including here in Japan, including across the United States. In many of the countries that I go to, the people that have been installed, they seem to think that they're on a mission from God and they're going to have a seat on Noah's Ark, right? They're going to have a seat. But here's a news flash. A lot of these people took the death jab, right? And a lot of these people, if you took the death jab, there is no seat reserved for you on the Ark. I don't care if you work for BlackRock, which many of those executives actually took the jab. If you took the jab, you're not one of the chosen people, period, right? And so and that includes royal families and many others. But they seem to think that they're part of the Ark, or they're going to be on the Ark, but they're not going to be. But a lot of these Europeans that are just turning out the lights on Europe, and Americans turning out the lights on America, and other countries like Australia doing it, and here in Japan, the leadership.
Powerful stuff. Michael Yon, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. We'll be right back. Thank you, Michael.
In a recent exclusive interview on the Alex Jones program, former National Counterterrorism Center Director Joe Kent delivered what he and the host described as an urgent message to President Donald Trump. The subject was the rapidly expanding war with Iran, a conflict Kent had previously warned against, and one he now argues has become a strategic liability with no clear path to victory. Kent, a combat veteran and Gold Star husband who resigned his post in March 2026, reiterated a core claim. Iran posed no imminent threat to the United States when the conflict began. In his view, the decision to escalate was driven by external pressure rather than American national interest. He has consistently maintained that high-ranking Israeli officials and aligned voices in media and policy circles successfully shaped the narrative, drawing the United States into a confrontation that serves others' priorities more than its own. This assessment, once dismissed by some, is presented in the interview as having been fully vindicated by subsequent events. The war, according to Kent, has evolved into a bombing campaign in search of a strategy. Iranian retaliatory strikes have targeted neighboring countries including Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, and Qatar. The Strait of Hormuz remains a critical vulnerability. American forces are exposed, economic costs are mounting, and the risk of a mass casualty incident or wider regional conflagration continues to grow. Kent argues that continued tit-for-tat escalation offers no decisive military solution and only deepens the quagmire. The practical advice offered as direct. First, restrain Israel. Kent insists the United States must clearly tell its ally that further unilateral actions that pull America deeper into the fight will no longer be supported, and that military aid should be conditioned on de-escalation, including withdrawal from Lebanon. Second, extract U.S. forces from the immediate theater so they cease to be easy targets. Third, reopen the Strait of Hormuz and related waterways through diplomacy and calibrated economic incentives rather than pure military pressure. Sanctions relief, in his analysis, can serve as leverage once the immediate military standoff is broken. Simply walking away from the current cycle of ineffective strikes, he suggests, removes Iran's justification for targeting commercial shipping while preserving American options. Kent's central point is that the window for an orderly exit is closing. Doubling down on a failing approach does not improve the odds. It multiplies the risks. President Trump still holds the authority to reverse course, restore an America First prioritization of national interest, and redirect focus to domestic challenges. The alternative, Kent warns, is continued entanglement that drains American blood and treasure for limited strategic gain. The interview closes with a straightforward appeal. The president who once campaigned against endless Middle Eastern wars now has the chance to end one before it metastasizes further. Whether that advice is heeded remains to be seen. What is clear from Kent's testimony is that the costs of inaction are already rising, and the opportunity to change direction will not remain open indefinitely.
Being joined by the 8th Director of the National Counterterrorism Center, a combat veteran, Special Forces operator, and all-around man's man, Joe Kent, joins me here for the third hour. I want to get right into it. The updates on the war. It's July 30th, 2026. The Middle East continues to be on fire. Since the last time we talked, Joe, we've lost 4 additional American service members that we know about. Their names, Tyler, Sarah, Angel, and Michael, all now deceased in a war of choice, ultimately manufactured by another country. Joe, where do things stand today?
Unfortunately, we're not in a good position at all. I would say even worse than the last time that we spoke. Like you said, we tragically lost some soldiers. We did our round of retaliation strikes that lasted for quite some time. There was back and forth between us and the Iranians. And then we attempted this, I think a sort of an effort to have a ceasefire so we could get more space for the negotiations. But the Iranians basically said that they're not playing that, and they just restarted the hostilities by launching some cruise missiles back at one of our bases in Jordan. Since then, we did retaliatory strikes against one of the Iranian-backed militias inside Iraq. But there's some technical issues we can get into there. That is part of the Iraqi Popular Mobilization Forces. That is part of the Iraqi military. So now we're doing strikes against basically the guys whose paychecks that we're paying inside of Iraq. Now, those guys, allegedly, they did take some strikes against Saudi, hit a couple of the different oil fields there. The Houthis said, no, that wasn't them. That was actually us. The Houthis also hit some of the oil fields. So we have the Houthis that are even more active now in shutting down the Bab al-Mandeb. The Straits of Hormuz continues to be strangled by the Iranians. So we're in a tough spot. I mean, President Trump has very limited options, unfortunately. His best hand still remains just to, I would say, to walk away from this whole thing and do the best he can here domestically to declare victory. But he's not doing that. And I fear that he's not doing that in I fear that he is going to escalate this because now that the Iranians have hit us once more, the Iranians aren't giving him what he needs. President Trump feels like he needs a piece of paper, some kind of a formal agreement that says, Iran's going to give him something so that he can say that he got a deal. I think the Iranians are aware of this, and they are not going to give him a deal. So right now, Iran has the upper hand, and whether or not Iran chooses to kind of go for broke and to try and get us sucked into a larger conflict, or they just keep us, strangled economically, that's kind of where things stand right now.
Powerful. Stay with us.
The answer to 1984 is 1776. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Yeah, we ain't doing no Hasbara here today. It's the real news, the real information, the real guest that can deliver it all. We just had the powerful Michael Yon on for the prior hour. We have Joe Kent joining us now again here in the third hour with Andrew Wilson coming up. Joe, how are you doing today with all of the news?
I'm doing well. Again, like I said, I wish we had a silver lining that we could put on this. Just unfortunately, we're just in a bad position. I hope President Trump, and I pray for him to get some clarity in all this and just realize that he's getting, bad advice from a lot of the people who encouraged him to get into this war. He tunes them out and he just says, hey, I'm going to come home. I'm going to bring the troops home. I think he should look at, the long arc of history. We've gotten out of other wars and temporarily it's been bad for presidents. But in the long run, when we got out of the wars, it ended up being the right thing to do, for a president. So I think if any president could sell this, it could potentially be President Trump. Unfortunately, I just have not seen him behave in a way that makes any sense to me recently. So I do fear that we're going to continue this escalation cycle.
Yeah, the question for me today is how are we going to acknowledge the reality? When is reality going to come knocking on the door? Because everything we've talked about for weeks, months at this point, a lot of people have, all the geopolitical analysts have, we're running low on munitions. The bases are heavily destroyed. The radars are out of commission. We've had a number of destroyed aircraft. I think the number is over 40 that have been taken out of commission. If we're going to stay in kind of the second phase of the war, and I define the first phase of the war as the 39 days of hell, the unleashing of the American military, the bombings over and over and over again, this second phase, this tit for tat, Joe, in your experience, or just what does your experience tell you about how much longer we can eke out this tit for tat thing before Trump either has to make major decision, ground invasion, whatever that would mean, perhaps further strikes, or does he back off? What do you think?
I think he's going to have to make a decision here pretty quickly. We even heard President Trump say this himself when the MOU first came out and President Trump was justifying why he was going to give the MOU a chance. He said, hey, we're about 4 weeks away from economic bedlam. And so basically the predictions by a lot of the different oil experts say that we're going to hit a major crisis, not just here in the States, but globally in terms of, not just oil, not just gas, but things like fertilizer production, et cetera, here by the end of the summer, fall, winter timeframe. So he doesn't have that long, especially with the tight shot clock of the midterms approaching. So time is not on President Trump's side. The Iranians know that. And so for the Iranians to continue to do what they're doing right now, it's very advantageous for them. And so I think that they are more than content to sit back and say, there's no way we're going to give President Trump the deal that he wants. He killed our supreme leader. He brought all this upon us. We have to, basically for the sake of deterrence, but then also for vengeance, we have to bloody his nose. And I think the debate within Iran is, how do they bloody his nose? Do they do it all at once, or do they sit back and let the economics and all the different wars that are getting lit on fire and just the expansion of the war, the way that Zelensky and others are trying to combine these two fronts, thinking that that's somehow going to help us? That does not help us out at all. And I think the Iranians realize that. So short of President Trump realizing his best move is just to walk away, I do fear that here pretty soon he's going to have to make another decision. Does he get us further into this? I saw reports on Twitter, I don't know if they're accurate or not, but this sounds right to me, that the Pentagon is saying, hey boss, we can do another 10 to 15 days of heavy bombing and that will take out all of Iran's missile capabilities. is. I really hope he doesn't even entertain that at this point, because the Iranians have shown that they have a very durable system that has been dispersed, that's hard for us to vector in on. So where would we be in the next 10 to 14 days? I think that's how you end up with something like a ground incursion, because President Trump's just going to get frustrated with the lack of results from this air campaign. And then I think, at a bad moment where he's, mad and wants to get something done, he signs off on some sort of a ground invasion of either one of the islands or, Bandar Abbas, the port there that we've been kind of doing some shaping operations around through our air campaign. That's truly what I fear, because his options are just really limited right now. The idea that he's going to be able to, choke them off economically. I saw a lot of happy talk about how the economic warfare that we're waging against Iran, that's going to be the final nail in the coffin. It's like, look, these guys have been under some form of heavy sanctions since 1979. There's not much more that we can do to them. And as a matter of fact, the dollar's even weaker because of everything we did in Ukraine. And there's just all these alternative workarounds for them to sell their oil on the market right now. So again, the Iranians know they have time on their side, and I think they know that they have more options than we do, regardless of, how we want to beat our chests here in America.
Right. I just think the West has made too many key assumptions, they would say, in intelligence gathering, right? We've made too many key assumptions. Oh, they're about to fall. We're about to beat them. They're about to be out of missiles. And the reality is, I think it's demonstrated our intelligence on the ground has not been good enough. It really hasn't been, because they've had the ability to continue the missile strikes, the drone strikes. Trump can say it's obliterated, it's gone, but there's a reality that our ships are parked very far off the coast in the blockade. Because if we got any closer, they'd be under severe threat. Now, there can be a debate where those are Chinese anti-ship missiles, where the Iranians might have those. The reality is they have a wind condition called the Strait of Hormuz. We don't really have a wind condition besides taking over their country. And I think it's key. You mentioned earlier our key allies, our strongest allies, Zelensky and Netanyahu visiting for the state funeral of Lindsey Graham. I guess he was literally in the rotunda. And while they're there, Netanyahu makes a statement. A reporter asks him, are there any cracks in the relationship between you and Trump? He says, no, it's as strong as a wall of granite, which is just, to me, it's pretty terrifying, because if it's as strong as a wall of granite, it sounds like he's probably going to get what he wants. And then Zelensky comes over here and kind of makes the same implied threat that made Trump outraged when he visited and sat down with Trump and JD, which is, you have big ocean. You don't feel pain now, but you'll feel pain later. So all these vague threats, veiled threats, it's simply put, both Netanyahu and Zelensky need a wider conflict in order to stay in power. This is just a reality. Zelensky is a dictator. They don't have elections there anymore. He openly says, we don't have it. It's wartime. We don't have an election. But in the Constitution, it states they have to have it even during wartime. Netanyahu, of course, wanted by his own government, not just the ICJ, wanted by Israel for crimes. They will not be able to prosecute him as long as he remains in power. Just how do you see kind of this new really axis of evil forming, man? I don't want to be a part of it.
I don't either. And look, there's no advantage to America for being a part of any of these conflicts. I have yet to see any of the hawks, any of the, Foundation for the Defense of Democracy neocons, or, people who are just cheerleading this war or the Ukraine war, explain what is actually in it for the American people, and explain it in a very, very clear and concise way that makes sense to your average American. If you say that we have to win over the Donbass, otherwise Putin is going to roll into Paris by Christmas and then he'll be in New York City, by New Year's, that just doesn't make any sense. That's nonsense. Right. This war has been going on now. It's been a bloodbath for well over, we're coming up on our third year. So, the whole thing there is just completely and totally ridiculous. We've wasted our munitions. We're now provoking essentially a nuclear war. It's already a heavy economic war with the Russians. This has weakened the dollar. It's put us further in debt. So there's no benefit for the American people. And now Zelensky, because he knows that he can kind of expand his war that was, kind of out of the spotlight for a while and not really popular with Republicans in general. Now he can try and wrap it into the Iran war that, although that war is not popular here either, he sees it as getting more attention, and rightfully so. It's getting more attention than his war. So he's trying to now link them. And so are a lot of the neocon backers. And again, for the neocons that say go in there and finish the job, number one, they can't define what finishing the job in Iran actually means, because most of them have never served a day. or they just want us to involve in this thing endlessly, and they won't just come out and say it. So they like that slogan a lot more.
No, that's key. That's key. They say they'll even say they're anti-war. They'll say, hey, but it's not a war yet. Joe, in your experience, you've done like 11 or 12 combat deployments, of course, Special Forces operator. What does that mean when you hear that? What do you think? What do you say?
I mean, I've always said, like, please explain to me how that works. If you say finish the job, come up with a plan, tell me how that works. Number one, how we're going to do it and what it accomplishes at the end. Even if these guys got what they wanted, if the entire regime fell today inside of Iran, that would be an absolute disaster. And I don't say that as a fan of the revolutionary Islamic Republican Guard inside of Iran. I say that just in terms of just the facts on the ground. You have a country of 90 million people, multiple different ethnic groups, awash with weapons and war right now. If that government did fall, it would be Libya on steroids. That's directly connected to Europe. You'd have massive migration issues. You'd have blowback terrorism issues. It would be an absolute nightmare and a disaster. So none of this is very well thought through. The Israelis have thought this through, and the Israelis have deployed their very, very powerful lobby here in America to make the case that we need to continue to try to destabilize and put Iran into a state of chaos, because the Israelis actually thrive in chaos. They think as long as their rivals and their enemies are in a chaotic state, then they can't consolidate power and they can't come pose a threat to them. That's Israeli doctrine. That's not American doctrine. We're very much against that. And again, this all goes back to just the fundamental question. Like, if any of this happens, what is in it for the United States of America? We heard the whole nonsense in the Iraq war, like, oh, it's going to be a great deal for America. We're going to get the oil. Like, none of that ever happened. Trump's trying to make that happen right now, kind of. But based on what's taking place, the way that the war is now expanded into Iraq and just Iraqi domestic politics, I don't think that's going to happen there either. But none of this benefits the American people. And this is at a time when most people have a hard time filling up a full tank of gas and paying for groceries. So this war is not in our best interest. Expanding the war is not in our best interest. And for the president to think about anything else and to listen to people that are explaining to him, like, you know, all these complicated plans for how we finish the job and how this is really some sort of a checkmate on China, et cetera, he needs to tune those people out, and he needs to listen to Donald Trump in 2016 when he spoke plainly and clearly about what was in the best interest for the American people. And if he starts thinking that way, I think he could still save this entire situation. But I fear he's not.
Yeah, when you love somebody and they're drinking themselves to death, you tell them to stop drinking. You don't tell them their liver has magical powers and they can fly to the moon. And that's kind of the situation that I think that we're in now. And here's the thing. He himself, Trump, has come after us and attacked us personally. Has called my father fried and low IQ, among other things. The reality is, do you want people to tell you the truth, or do you want people to lie to you? And ultimately, they can lie to you. It can feel good. It doesn't feel good to the families of the American soldiers that die overseas. And there is no explanation. There is no proof that you can give to say, oh, well, it is what it is. It's a war of choice. The Strait wasn't closed before February 28th. There weren't missiles flying back and forth. We initiated that, and we got to pull out now. I think this is also key. I want to bring it up. I just want to get your take on it, because it seems to be unclear, but maybe you've heard more. Of course, I have way better sources than I could hope to have. Egypt downplays drone strike as fears grow for Suez Canal. It was reported last night, this is July 30th, this is written, that an explosion occurred aboard 2 gas tankers at the port. Reuters said this is a drone attack, while the New York Times this morning quoted 2 Iranian officials who said the strike was intended to demonstrate that if Iran chooses to escalate the situation, this is key, global energy supplies and shipping could be hit much harder. So now we've got 1 choke point, Strait of Hormuz, 2 choke points, Strait of Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, now 3 potentially with the Suez Canal. Joe, what's your take on this?
Yeah, this is another case where it's very easy for the Iranians to inflict a lot of pain with very little resources. The Iranians have geography working out in their advantage. Obviously, the Strait of Hormuz is in their backyard. They have powerful allies they've invested in with the Houthis and the Bab el-Mandeb. And so now, and powerful allies in Iran, powerful allies of Hezbollah. So right now, in order to basically continue to frustrate and choke off the supply of energy to the world, they just need to keep up the pressure in the Strait Straits of Hormuz, which is actually fairly simple for them to do with drones and ballistic missiles. Bab al-Mandeb, they've got their friends, the Houthis, that are doing that right now, and then pushing out into the Suez Canal. It's just a matter of them either launching from, their home soil, which they're more than capable of doing, or having the Houthis do it for them, or having the Iraqi militias do it for them, or having Hezbollah do it for them. And so what the Iranians are trying to do right now, I think, is two things. They're trying to chip away at the supply of world energy, because that's going to hurt all the countries that are supporting the coalition that's supporting us against them. But also, they are trying to fragment our relationship with all of the different Sunni Arab states there in the Middle East. They're trying to basically say it's not worth your while to be directly tied to the Americans. If you are directly tied to the Americans, we are going to inflict pain upon you. And right now, what's taking place in Iraq, we're seeing that in a very big way. Iraq is ran by the Shia majority there, many of whom have close ties to the Iranian government. The Iraqis are caught in between. Zaidi, the prime minister, was in Washington, D.C., meeting with President Trump, and then he went to Tehran. So he's very much trying to, make sure his country doesn't get dragged and sucked into this. The Iranians had their proxies start doing strikes into Saudi Arabia, knowing that we would respond. So us and the Saudis then responded. And so now you have Americans and Saudis, Sunni Saudis, killing Shia militiamen in Iraq. So that's another way that they can start chipping away at the alliance that we have with Iraq. There's a lot of other dynamics there at play, but basically the Iranians are trying to inflict a cost on all of our allies within the region. And if you look at Kuwait, if you look at Bahrain, you look at, to a certain extent, Qatar as well, a lot of the countries that have been very closely aligned with us, Jordan most recently, the countries that have been the most closely aligned with us are starting to feel a lot of pain, and they're going to start feeling a lot of internal pressure. Their leaders are, from their people, from their parliaments, to say, hey, maybe we need to tell the Americans, like, hey, we love you, but you can't base here, and you most certainly can't launch attacks here against Iran, because it's really just not worth it anymore for us. Because if they keep hitting along the Red Sea, they keep hitting the Suez Canal, or even just occasionally doing it, that frustrates that shipping and makes the insurance premiums shoot up. That takes away a good deal of the money that the Egyptians receive, because the Egyptians, they have tourism, they have some energy, but the Suez Canal is a huge money maker for them. They're going to start losing money because of what the Houthis are doing further south down the Red Sea. But an occasional drone or an occasional attack on any of those ports on the Med side, that's going to take away a lot of the Egyptian government's revenue as well. So this is the Iranian strategy, and they don't need a lot of resources basically to continue to inflict pain upon us. This is where time is very much on the Iranian side, and it's not on our side at all.
Right. Let's just look out, because months, years plus into the future, ultimately people that support these operations, if you ask them, hey, you say, hey, point to a calendar for me if you could. What day is this going to end? Whereabouts, and just tell me like the gradual recovery of the oil market, the fertilizer, all the supplies and goods that flow through these vital waterways that are choked off. How long it's going to take us to rebuild our bases, rebuild our capability in the region with the radar and all of that. And they're not going to be able to give you a timeline, because their position is it has to continue forever. Like, that's what they have to defend, right? If you're defending the operations right now, you have to say that we're able to do this in the region forever. I think it was demonstrated before this happened, just by the will of the American people, Trump winning a referendum against the Iraq War in 2016, that Americans were done with this sunk cost fallacy. It's like the last day I was in the casino at Vegas. I was staying at a hotel Jake Shields put me in. I had like $300, and I was like, I didn't gamble the whole time I was here. And then I lost all the money. But you don't stay in the casino and go back over and over and over again and take a mortgage out on your house because, this time the lucky Chinese dragon is going to spin on the wheel and give you what you want. It just doesn't work that way. What do you say about kind of the sunk cost fallacy, all this?
I mean, that's what this is. And this should have been our lesson, the lesson that we learned from the war on terror, but then, also the lesson we should have learned from the Vietnam War is that, like, it doesn't get better if you keep gambling. You can't drink yourself sober, whatever analogy you want to use. The fact that you have invested a ton of resources, a ton of lives into a certain problem, if you're not getting the result that you want, that doesn't mean you double down. That does not mean that more resources, more bombing campaigns, more troops, another surge, finishing the job, air quotes, like none of of that is going to work. We have enough data to support that. Now, the case can be made, do we try something different? I would even say the way that we're fighting this war right now, if I was in support of us fighting this war and us actually going after and taking down the Iranian regime, I would basically have the same advice that I have right now. We should get out of the region. Why are we running low on interceptors? If those reports are true, I don't know. But if we're running low on interceptors, that's because we've been firing an exorbitant amount of interceptors, trying to defend bases that are getting hammered, bases that we can't put soldiers at anymore, bases that we can't really launch significant attacks from anymore. So what are we doing? Just the thing is, we get so stuck in this loop where we can't give up any ground, we can't retreat, because then we're going to say, oh, the Iranians are going to claim that they pushed us out of the region.
They
and
have
that's going to be a
hostage.
major victory for them.
They have us hostage, not the other way around. It's like we got them right
precisely.
we got them right where we want them. We're tied up in a chair, essentially, right in front of them.
Exactly. And we're burning through really precious munitions. We've also burned through precious lives defending these bases that may have served a purpose at one point in time, but now they don't. I mean, there's a basic principle in, any kind of infantry tactics. If you can't shoot from where you're at, you have to maneuver and move positions. And that's essentially where we're at right now with our bases. But we've got our basically concrete around our feet, and we say that we can't leave these bases, but that's all self-imposed. We could leave these bases. We could get our troops out of the region. We could get our vessels, away from the Straits of Hormuz and try a different tactic, but we just refuse to do that. And that is the sunk cost fallacy. That is the gambler's fallacy. And look, CENTCOM, the Central Command, they have been notorious for this. It didn't surprise me at all to see the report where Cooper said, hey, boss, I just need 15 more days of another bombing campaign. I mean, CENTCOM commanders for decades now have said, I need one more troop surge. I need one more big push into, this city or that city, and we'll turn the tide in Iraq. We'll turn the tide in Afghanistan. It's the exact same thing that we're seeing here right now. We have got to break free from that. We have enough knowledge in the U.S. government that we should not be making these same mistakes all over again.
Yeah, I think Colin Powell said not to make a Air Force General Chief of Staff because you need a soldier on the ground, you need that type of experience. And when people think you can just do a bombing campaign and win, bombing campaigns didn't win World War II. Like, that's just reality, right? It was men on the ground that won World War II. And when people like to draw these comparisons, is like, we have space-age weapons and they're cavemen and they can't do anything. Well, that's not true. Sure, we have space-age weapons. We have tons of stuff. They have the Shaheed, and the Shaheed costs 15 G's. It doesn't cost $4 million. And that asymmetry, that advantage they have when it comes to how much their stuff costs versus ours, that's enough to keep them in a fight that long-term we can't wage. And I think the reality, the facts on the ground are right there. In closing, Joe Kent, what do you want people to know about the sadly coming escalation and what they should be prepared to see?
Look, I think now is a time, if you supported President Trump before, I think it's a time to get very, very vocal. I think we need to be as vocal as we can on social media platforms like this, but also calling your senators, calling your congressmen, calling the White House switchboard, and just telling them to get out of this situation, get our troops out of the region and say that you ended the war. That's going to provide the political space where President Trump feels comfortable that he can actually say that. And the voices that say, thank you for getting us out of this war, will outweigh the voices that will criticize him and, say he coward or say we lost or that type of stuff. So I think the more that President Trump hears that people just want him to pull out of this war and he sees that can be a political win, I think that's the most important thing. Because if we say that, Trump, you broke this, now you got to fix it, all he's going to do is get a menu of options from CENTCOM, from the Pentagon, that are going to say, more bombing campaigns, and that's how you slowly slide into putting boots on the ground. Because the bombing campaigns just simply, they're not going to work. They're going to be spectacular. They're going to make for great highlight footage. We're going to be able to go say we bombed, X, Y, and Z different things. But then at some point, his generals are going to come to him and say, hey, if you want to keep doing this, we're actually going to have to take ground. And then we're going to take major losses, and then we are going to be locked into this thing. He's got a narrow window. It's tragic that we lost those troops, but we fired back. We took our retaliation. He's got a window right now where he could end this thing. This is as good of a time as I think he's going to get. If he doesn't take advantage of this window right now to get our troops out, we're going to be locked into further escalation. He needs to start listening to different people. You talked about the intelligence picture. Unfortunately, he just hasn't been listening to the intelligence picture. Our intelligence picture as to what the Iranians would do, it's been pretty accurate for the entire time that I was in the administration. The president, unfortunately, just chose to listen to a lot of the pundits, a lot of the talking heads, and a lot of the neocons who hated his guts before this war, who got him into this war. He needs to tune them out. He needs to bring in other voices, but just have the moral courage and the political strength to pull all of our troops out of the region.
Powerful intel. Thank you for your time. Joe Kent, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm going to tell you something right now.